Hello and welcome all to Mushonomics. This is our eighth class. We will be discussing national income. In last class also we started discussion on national income only. So now we will proceed with the discussion. This is the Telegram channel Mushonomics that you can join or follow to get the PDF notes. Whatever we are discussing, that will be available in PDF form, so that will be easy for you to revise, right? Let's start with the discussion. In last class we saw the definition of GDP. Let's revise that once and then we will proceed. So GDP is nothing but total value of total value of final goods and services total value of final goods and services produced final goods and services produced in domestic territory in domestic territory of an economy in a given accounting year. Then we started discussing concepts hidden in this definition. So we talked about accounting year. Now we can talk about domestic territory and final goods and services. If we understand these three concepts, then we will be in a better position to understand the definition and the concept of GDP, right? So in last class we discussed about accounting year in detail. Now let's discuss domestic territory first. So what is the meaning of domestic territory of an economy in the definition of GDP? Let's discuss first. Okay, so what do we understand when we say domestic territory in the definition of GDP? Let's see what exactly it is. So domestic territory consists of number one, land and sea boundary. Land and sea boundary. Sea boundary up to 12 nautical miles. Up to 12 nautical miles. That is, we are talking about political boundary of a country. Political boundary. Land boundary, you know, right? And sea boundary, in sea up to what distance? So 12 nautical mile. This definition is about the political boundary of a country. Now if we say, for example, there are aircrafts and ships operated by residents of a country. That means, that is company which is headquartered in the country. For example, Indigo Airlines is there, right? In the country. For example, Indigo Airlines is there. So Indigo flights operating in Canada, for example. Indigo flights operating in Canada. So value of goods and services produced will be taken in India's GDP. I hope you got the point. Aircrafts and ships operated by residents of a country. the company which is having headquartered in a particular country, this will be treated as the domestic territory of that country. For example, if Indigo is operating in Canada, so that is operating in the domestic territory of Canada, but for GDP calculation purpose or for economic activities purpose, we will take the values of goods and services produced by Indigo into the GDP of India, right? Because see, aircrafts travel across the borders, right, country to country, also. So when they are traveling from one country to another country, the GDP calculation will take into the account of that country in which the company is headquartered, right? For example, if we are not very much clear with this example, then we take other example also. Qatar Airways, for example, Qatar Airways operating in India. So value of goods and services produced will be calculated under Qatar's GDP, not India's GDP, right? So for Qatar Airways, the boundary of India means wherever the Qatar Airways is operating, that particular territory will be taken as the domestic territory of Qatar. It is not for political purpose, it is only for GDP calculation, economic activities purpose, right? Okay, let's take another thing. So it was first land and sea boundary, aircrafts and ships. Third, we can take oil platforms and gas rigs operated by residents of a country. Residents of a country means where the country has established its headquarters, paying taxes, etc., etc. It will pay taxes to other countries wherever they are going also, but mainly it is about headquarter, right? So for example, ONGC Videsh Limited, if this is the government enterprise of India, right? So if this ONGC is carrying out any particular exploration in maybe some far location, for example near Venezuela, so value of goods and services produced will be taken under India's GDP. Why? Because it is headquartered in India, right? Similarly, if some British exploration company is performing some exploration in the territory of India, that will be taken as domestic territory of Britain, right? I hope we are clear on this. So this point number 1, 2 and 3. So point number 1, 2 and 3, these we are talking as domestic territory with respect to economy purposes, right? Calculation of GDP purposes. So there are rules which govern this. So United Nations is having United Nations system of national accounting. So the rules we are talking here is rules of 2008, right? Rules of UNSNA, in short it is known as UNSNA. So rules are of 2008. Some new draft has also come for rules 2025, right? So this body decides these kind of rules and regulations, right? And one more thing is there, when we talk about this third, one more point is there, the fourth one, that is embassy and embassies and consulates. Embassies and consulates of a country located abroad. This is also for political purposes also, embassies and consulates. For example, India is having its embassy in US, so that particular place or location will be India's domestic territory for political purposes also, right? So in different movies etc, you might have seen, if people has committed some crime, they hide into the into embassy or consulates, and that embassy and consulates will not govern by the local rules, right? Domestic rules, that will be governed by the rules of that particular country. For example, you are an Indian and you went to US and unfortunately you committed any crime, and if you take shelter in in India's embassy in US, then you will not be trial under US laws etc. Yeah, that there are circumstances, and then you will be handed over to the local police etc. That is the different thing, but till the time you are in India's embassy in US, you will be treated, you cannot be trial by the police under local rules and regulations or local laws, right? So this is about domestic territory that we wanted to understand here. The third point that we want to understand in the domestic definition of GDP, that is final goods and services. So what are final goods and services? Let's try to understand. So we will take broadly classification of goods and services on the basis of usage, that we will talk about, right? So classification on the basis of usage. Let's take number 1, consumer goods and services also we can take, and services. Okay, what are consumer goods and services? All those goods and services which are used for ultimate satisfaction, that is not for further production, of ultimate satisfaction of households are consumer goods. So all those goods and services which are this. Now let's understand through an example. If I purchase a car for self-use, I'm going to office, I'm going to college, school or something like that. So I have purchased a car and I'm using that car for my personal use, self-use, right? That will be a consumer good. Now let's understand the example of capital good here, so we can understand better. Number 2, capital goods. What are capital goods? All those goods which are used for further production of goods and services, over a long period of time, over a long period of time. This is the definition of what? Capital goods. What are the examples that we can take here? Example, a car used as a taxi, used as a taxi.